Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said great. I'm doing great. I'm hoping today will be a great day. I am in Woodstock, Connecticut, and this was the hometown of a man named Carroll Spinney, who entertained many of us on a daily basis for decades, and you may have not even known it. I'm hoping to find his grave. He's in a family cemetery, but it's a little unclear as to where that is. It is somewhere here. This is where he made his home. But gosh, he was in the suit of Big Bird. He was actually the puppeteer that worked and voiced Big Bird, as well as Oscar the Grouch. Let's go see if we can find Carroll Spinney and talk about his great life. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all begins now. Nice, beautiful, peaceful area. Charles over here taking it easy, but he's here. So he's located in a family cemetery. It says Spinney Family Cemetery. However, when you look around online, there's not really any information as to where that is, and the only thing that I could find was that finally I found a little blurb that said it was inside this cemetery. So I'm hoping that we can find him. And as far as I could find, I couldn't find any photos of the grave or anything like that to, even have a clue to go on. Just walked all the way to the back and I see there is a headstone here, but then there's a little bench down there. Kind of wondering if he's down there. No, there's no graves back here. I'll continue to look. Alright, I have looked all over this. I don't think that he is buried here. So I believe the family cemetery is actually right on the edge of the property here. You can see it right there. I'm not sure, when it's a cemetery, it's supposed to be open to the public, and there is a gate open here at the property and a little drive that goes over to it, but I'm buzzing at the gate to see. I don't want to trespass, so I'm going to see if I can maybe wait till someone comes out here, but if not, that is the grave of the great Carroll Spinney. You can see it pretty clearly over there. I haven't seen anybody come out in a while, but I do believe that that absolutely is where Carroll Spinney is buried. Carroll Spinney was a really amazing man. When he was a child, his mother was an artist, and she took him to see a puppet show, and he got so into the puppet show that he went out and bought a little puppet for 5 cents, put on a show for the neighborhood kids charging 2 cents, and got bit by the bug and loved it. And his mother then decided, well, I'm just going to help feed this. So she started writing the scripts for the puppet shows, helped make new puppets, definitely encouraged him to go into this path. Now his father was kind of the opposite, didn't think that anything would ever come of this, and was actually, as a child, very hard on Carroll. He said if he did anything wrong, his father would just absolutely flip out. And it wasn't until many, many years later that his father would apologize when Carroll would, get much older. But when he was actually a teenager, because of his name being Carroll, kids would ruthlessly tease him and make fun of him, call him names. And so he was a very much introverted person growing up. But he said when he was a teenager, he just had graduated, he borrowed his father's car. And the car had I think he said it was a quarter of a tank of gas, and his father accused him of borrowing it when it had a half tank of gas and not putting enough gas back in and cheating him. So Carroll said he took that as a sign. They had this big fight that was just time to go. So he actually went and enlisted in the military and joined the Air Force for 4 years, and he said it was some of the best time of his life, and he actually got a TV show during that time, and which is crazy because TV was only a few years old at that point. So when he came out of the military, he ended up getting another show, just kind of a fill-in spot, but then ended up getting hired on the Bozo show, and he would do several characters on the live Bozo show. Now, he said he enjoyed doing it, but he said he just kind of felt like it was eye candy for the viewers. It was entertainment, but it was you didn't really learn anything from it. And so he thought he wanted to do a little bit more with his talent. So he said just by a stroke of luck, he went to the puppetry convention that was happening in Salt Lake City, and he had put together an animated movie that he was going to show. And this movie had to be projected up onto the screen, and then he was in a little puppet stage on the screen. He would be interacting with what was going on the big screen. Well, he said they ended up shining a spotlight down on him, and it ended up flooding out everything on the big screen, so people didn't really know what was going on. And so he said he just went behind the puppet stage, lit up a light so that people could see his silhouette, and then he just started acting like he was pulling his hair out. Now, he found out right before the show that one of his heroes, Jim Henson, was in the audience, and Jim Henson ended up coming backstage and saying to him, look, I know what you were trying to do, and I like it, so I'd like for you to come and meet with me about doing the Muppets. He says, what? He says, I want you to come work for me. So he ends up going and working for Jim Henson, and initially it wasn't a very good fit. He said he didn't fit in, and they gave him 2 new characters. This was like 1969. They were just introducing Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, and so Carroll Spinney would end up starting those characters. He said he just really wasn't, I guess, grasping it, or he just wasn't really doing the kind of job that they thought, and he wanted to quit. And it was actually somebody on the crew that said, give it another month, just put more of yourself into it, and I think you'll get it. And so he said he had started doing Big Bird because he would actually get in the suit, but because of how tall Big Bird was, he had to extend his hand up, and he had to work Big Bird. His pinky would move the eyes, and then he would move the mouth with his hand. So he was constantly always having his hand up in the air like this, and he decided to develop Big Bird as kind of a yokel, a country yokel at first, but then he said, I realized that no, Big Bird should be like a grown-up little kid. And so that is basically what Big Bird ended up being. Everything that Carroll Spinney, the naiveties of the world, the way that he saw that children thought, and the way that he thought kids could best correlate with this character, was he would do it just like that. So he would be in the suit walking. He said he basically he had a monitor that hung on his chest, and he could look down at it, and that would show him a camera showing what everyone outside of him saw him as. So he said, if I was going to make a right on camera, I had to make a left in person. And he said, I would watch that, but I also had my script pages taped to the inside of the costume as well. So you can imagine how difficult this was to be doing all this with the hand and looking down, seeing how you looked on camera and reading the script pages. It was a lot, but he loved it, and he became the character. I mean, he created what everyone loved about the character, the voice, all that stuff. And he also did Oscar the Grouch. So he made sure that Oscar always had this heart of gold, no matter how grouchy he was, no matter what situation they put Oscar in, Oscar was lovable. So he finally hit his stride where he was doing a show that was giving back. It was actually helping kids. It was getting them through situations. And through this character, he would end up going out making public appearances. He would go to China and film in China. He was actually supposed to be on the Challenger. Big Bird was going to go to space, and apparently the issue was that the costume was just too big. So they ended up replacing Carroll Spinney, which would have been probably an amazing tale of taking Big Bird to space, but they actually replaced Carroll Spinney with Krista McAuliffe, the school teacher, and then the Challenger ended up blowing up. So kind of a crazy life that he lived. He did this character as long as he could. They ended up bringing in somebody eventually just in case Carroll would ever, decide to retire, because they figured he can't do this forever. But he started in 69 and just kept going and going and going. And he ended up going much longer than he ever thought. But he ended up passing away at the age of 85. and it was basically, you know, he had an issue where, because of all the puppeteering he did, he eventually got to a point where one of the reasons they hired a backup to kind of do some of the stunts and things like that was, not only was it physically demanding, but when you do that as much as he had, he started developing a thing where his muscles would contract, or they would be in use so much they would just like drop, and they would just be unusable. And that's basically what happened, was that he that took over, and he just got to the point where, you know, he couldn't use his muscles anymore. So it was sad. He lived to be 85. And there's another crazy thing, is that on the property where he's buried, he had a handyman that ended up, you know, without anyone in the family knowing, the guy ended up killing a woman, and storing her body in one of the sheds. Now, Carroll Spinney was never, you know, attached to that or accused of anything, any wrongdoing or anything. It was literally just somebody that worked for them. But that was a crazy story attached to where he's buried. So I'm 100% sure that they are buried there on the property. It's just whether it's right there. You know, I kind of think maybe it would be, but it's just crazy, because down where I showed you, there is that, and it's obviously a big headstone, and there's seats around it and everything. But then if you look up the hill, there's another one of those golden kind of marble things that they have at the gravesite as well, at the top of the hill, with a flag. So I don't know if that's just because he was in the military, or if he's buried at the top of the hill and his parents maybe are buried down there. But without being able to ask anyone, I certainly don't want to trespass. But that is a weird question, because I know in general, when it's like a family cemetery, whatever, it has to be open to the public. And the gate was open. I did buzz several times, but obviously it's an older intercom system, and I don't think it's hooked up anymore. So I didn't want to trespass. Even though the gate was open, I could have just went to the right, and it literally would have been right there. But it's, you know, it's not worth the risk. And, you know, that's not what Big Bird would want, is for me to trespass on his property. I don't think so. Rest in peace, Carroll Spinney and wife Deborah Spinney. You know, I would have loved to, I was hoping I would run into maybe a family member or someone out there, because obviously if it's a family cemetery, his kids, someone in his family still lives out there. Love to have gotten a little interview with them. But yeah, I've ever since I watched the documentary on Carroll Spinney years ago when it came out, I've always wanted to come visit his grave. And I didn't realize till I was on my way out here that it was, a lot of times there are family cemeteries, but they're very easily accessible to everyone. And this one, you know, once I got out and started looking around, I found out it wasn't where I thought it was. And then I knew where his address was, like the home he lived in, because of the, obviously the court case and everything. So I just figured I'd give it a try. So I do believe that that is the final resting place of Big Bird, Oscar the Grouch, and Carroll Spinney. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. Rest in peace, Carroll Spinney. You may not have been liked when you were in high school, but you were a hero to probably all of the children of everyone that ever made fun of you. Have a great night, everyone, and goodbye.